Welcome to the Midwest Blitz. It's college football comfort food for the Midwest soul. Now, here are your hosts, Coach Drew and Big Nick.
Welcome to another edition of the Midwest Blitz. We're at the quarterfinals. Yup.
You mean the Final Four, Coach Drew. This is the college football Final Four. And our first game, Thursday, is the number 10 seeded Miami Hurricanes versus the number 6 seeded Ole Miss Running Rebels. So, Coach Drew, you often compare football games to combat sports like boxing. This is the ultimate contrast of styles, and styles make fights in the sport of boxing. Chambliss, the quarterback for Ole Miss, was absolutely elite. I mean, breathtakingly good. They're talking about getting him another year of eligibility after, he's a transfer from Division II Ferris State. They're talking about getting him another year of eligibility. I think that he could get drafted right now. His ability to escape the blitz against Georgia was elite. And Kewan Lacey, him and Lacey are a 1-2 punch that Ole Miss fans will never forget for the rest of their life. This has been a great ride for the Rebels. Pete Golding's a great hire for Ole Miss. After being abandoned by the snake in the grass and went to Louisiana State, go Tigers. I guess it's more important to make $5 more a year than to compete for a national championship if you're Lane Kiffin. It's a shame that he abandoned this team. Pete Golding is a great hire, somebody that wants to be here, and that's what you need at a proud university, whether it's considered a blue blood or not. You want a coach who wants to be there. But I'm afraid the Cinderella story for Ole Miss is about to end. Their pumpkin's about to turn into a carriage because Mario Cristobal's strategy of sticking to the run game, leaning on a strong offensive and defensive line, and a bunch of players that want to be physical instead of spreading it out like they did last year, has really taken hold for the Miami Hurricanes. Their offensive and defensive line combo, Francis Maui-Noah is going to be a high-round pick in the NFL draft on the offensive line. Ruben Bain, Keontae Scott, and Hakeem Mesidor are absolute animals on the defensive line, and I mean that in the most loving way possible. I'm not sure how Ole Miss, without a reliable first-down running game, is going to be able to hang around. Now, like I said, Chambliss has been a magician against the rush in Georgia in the last game, and we got that game wrong. I got that game wrong, Coach Drew. I thought Georgia would beat him again because I thought Georgia's pass rush had improved, and I thought that their overall defense coverage, etc., had improved. Maybe it had. Maybe Ole Miss's offense has gotten better. Maybe it's just because they rallied around the fact that their team was called into question. They had national media pundits saying that it was cool for their coach to leave. Stephen A. Smith said, "Get over it, Ole Miss. Your coach is leaving." I'm not sure why he feels the need to comment on that. As we've said previously on the Midwest Blitz, I would bet you $100 that Stephen A. Smith has never bought a ticket to a college football game in his life. He's from New York. He went to a hairstylist school or something. He's never had a football helmet on, but he mocked Ole Miss. And a lot of people at ESPN mocked Ole Miss, and they excused Lane Kiffin leaving, which I know the Ole Miss fans are not happy about. I don't like any of that, but facts are facts, and I don't think that Ole Miss has a chance to match up with Miami on the line of scrimmage on either side of the football. Miami has turned into a machine up front, and the three most physical teams left in the tournament, Indiana, Oregon, and Miami, they're all left. The teams that couldn't match up front, Ohio State, who was one of the most talented teams in the tournament, got beat by Miami because they had athletes, and they had more athletes than Ole Miss does, frankly. Not at quarterback. Chambliss is better than saying at quarterback. But it doesn't matter if you have athletes if you can't block for the quarterback and you can't spring holes for running backs. And the thing about Miami is their secondary is now elite. with Keontae Scott both able to cover the pass and the run, he comes down into that nickelback / monster spot. Some people call it the star position. But they're for Ole Miss to win this game, Chambliss and Keywan Lacey are going to both have capes on like Superman. And I don't see how they do it, because on the other side of the ball, Miami is going to hammer Ole Miss's defensive line. Ole Miss does have some elite athletes on the defensive line. But when I say elite athletes, I don't mean elite players. I don't mean gap sound. I don't mean technique sound players. I just mean guys that probably whooped ass in high school, and they whoop ass when they play against players who are not as big and strong as them. Ole Miss's defensive line has guys, Coach Drew, that are big and strong and can move, that by the third quarter can't get in a three-point stance on defense. And I just can't abide that as a football guy. I can't claim that Ole Miss is going to hang with Miami. If this game is close at halftime, and it probably will be, Miami will hammer Ole Miss's defensive line so hard in the running game, it'll feel like an earthquake for Ole Miss fans. They don't have, I was going to say they don't have the bodies. They don't have the coaching or the discipline that Miami has. And that's not a shot at Pete Golding. Oh my goodness, what a difficult situation this is for the Revs. Ole Miss has survived this far, and it has surprised me, because they have not been particularly tough up front or consistent up front on either side of the ball. And I know old Reb fans are wanting to shoot me right now, and that's fine. I don't disrespect the achievements that your team has had. There's no way you win this fist fight against Miami in the trenches. And I don't know, Drew, I'll pass this off to you here in a second, but I had a conversation with a SEC fan, and they said they thought Georgia was the favorite to win this college football playoff coming in. And so they were giving respect to Ole Miss, and Ole Miss deserves a lot of respect. And I said, you haven't watched the Big Ten game all year, have you? You haven't watched any other conference. Coach Drew, some of these people think that if you play in the SEC, then you're anointed to be the national champion or to make it to the national championship game. The SEC is not as tough at the line of scrimmage this year after watching a lot of film from these college football playoff games. They have some athletes. Just same thing I said about USC earlier, Drew. They have big guys that can move, but they don't execute well on a down-by-down basis. They're not well coached. They're not well conditioned. It's going to come to pass. If Ole Miss wins this game, it's going to be Chambliss and Lacey just ripping Miami apart, because they're not going to stop the Miami running game. I don't see how it happens, and I'll take one on the chin again. I missed it last time when Ole Miss won, and again, Coach Drew, before I pass it off, I support Ole Miss. I love it that they've been winning in the absence of their coach that abandoned them, but I just don't see how Chambliss can carry them to victory against this Miami defense.
Yeah, consistency definitely takes a part in what we're looking at in this game. Now, they are playing in Arizona, home of the Arizona Cardinals, at the State Farm Stadium in Glendale. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because there's going to be scouts there, probably from Arizona, looking at Carson Beck as possibly a next franchise quarterback. As many of you might know, Kyle Murray has been injured like almost all season, and they might be even looking at Chambliss too.
Did he injure his thumb? Kyler Murray,
Yes,
did he injure his thumb?
Playing video games. I mean, Black Ops 7 did come out or something like that. But Chambliss, I think too, he's exploring all options here. If he can get another year of eligibility, he wasn't the starting quarterback to begin the season. Where's his draft stock? So he definitely has to rely on some people in his ear telling him what to do. One of the shiesty things, I don't know if it was shiesty, maybe it was contract, maybe they didn't think Ole Miss was going to make it this far, but Lane Kiffin pulled 5 of the 6 assistants that were still there. Now, why does this matter? Well, okay, you're down your generals. He pulled those guys and pulled them into LSU. The only one still standing is former Notre Dame son, Charlie Weiss Jr.
Charlie Weiss Jr.
Yep, he's the only stand. He's the OC, right? But all these other assistants left to go to LSU to help with, I don't know, transfer portal stuff like that. We're going to tackle that later on in the podcast as well. But again, going into this game, similar to what happened with Ohio State last week, Ryan Day had to call offensive calls, right? And a lot of people were questioning how would that affect. Well, the first half was not good. The second half, he actually figured out what needed to happen, and the second half, unfortunately, wasn't there. One of the other
It's too
things,
late.
too, is we talk about the three most important positions in football is quarterback, left tackle or the blindside tackle, and also D-line or edge rusher, right? And if you look at Carson Beck versus Chambliss, at this point, they're about almost equal. I would give Carson Beck the nod just a little bit because he has more experience. But again, it's going to be a shootout there. But Mesidor on the D-line as an edge, right? And you have Bain. Nothing to knock with Ole Miss has to. Ole Miss attack, right? So basically who would I'd favor, and I'm gonna also build on that later. One of the other things too that I'm looking at in this game is what can Lacey do to help Ole Miss and slow down that attack that
Correct.
Miami has, right? The worst thing they want to do is set Chambliss back there for failure by letting him sit back there the whole time and try to throw the ball, right?
Yeah.
And letting Mesidor and Bain press the offensive line, who we know is not superior to that D-line that Miami has.
Yeah.
How do they offset it? By doing stuff like checkdowns, screens, making them move east to west, not north and south, then hit them where it hurts. That's where Charlie Weiss can take advantage of this game. Now, okay, before I get the Rebels all hyped, right? I do want to say this, okay? Let's look at the last couple of games. We're going to go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 games for each team, and I just want to talk about them briefly. On November 8th, when they played Citadel, they won 49-0. Whoop-de-doo, right? Then 11, 15, 25, they played Florida and only won 34-24. And Florida was not good this year, right? But it's the SEC, so it must be different. And then when they played on November 28th against Mississippi State, they won 38-19. Tulane, they won 41-10. And Georgia, they pulled it out in overtime. Was that overtime?
Yeah.
39-34. Now, I'm just going to look at the offensive side and talk a little bit about the defense. Offense, 49, 34, 38, 41, 39. Last 5 games. They can score, right? There's nothing about that.
Flat out
The
score,
defense,
for sure.
The defense, though, now, okay, we're talking about Citadel, the first one. 0, 24, 19, 10, 34. 34 against the Dogs. Now, let's look at Miami, okay? Miami also didn't play in their conference champions, and as we know on the Midwest Blitz, you don't necessarily have to win your conference to win the national championship, as Ohio State did. And Notre Dame, who played in the championship last year, they don't have a conference, so they don't play that game. Now, going back to Miami, Miami has been a sleeping giant. Now, I will say this, though. They were favored to win the ACC early in the season. Them and Clemson were to be played in the championship. Now, Clemson fell off faster than I can think of. Yeah, it crashed hard. But Miami was favored. So I don't want any of this, it's a Miami Cinderella run. No, it's not. It is not. Okay, and I'm not knocking them off. They did a great job. They beat Notre Dame to start the season. They wrote it out. They just had unfortunate losses to SMU and Louisville. Their last 5 games, okay? North Carolina State, 41-7. Virginia Tech, 34-17. Pitt, 38-7. Texas A&M at Texas A&M, 10-3. Okay, that's huge. Okay, that's a road game going to the 12th man, and I just want to talk about how low the scoring was and how good this Miami team is. Ohio State, 24-14, and I want to say Ohio State scored in the second half to make it closer because it was not looking good. In comparison, Miami does not let you score. Ole Miss relies on scoring. Where do they meet? Vegas, defensive teams win national champions. I will live and die by that. the teams that I've researched, the Miami has the formula to win it all. Unfortunately, Ole Miss, you have so many problems. It is a Cinderella story for you, and I don't see them advancing after this week.
I don't think so either, Coach Drew. You made a great point about them, Ole Miss, having to use probably screen games to stretch you horizontally because they're not going to be able to run it up the middle against Miami. And that's something that they've done on and off all year. So that was a good point because there's no way they're running into the teeth of this defense. We just watched what Miami did to Ohio State, and okay, I would now say even as good as Ohio State's receivers are and how bright their NFL future is and all that stuff, Ole Miss's passing game, if you just wanted to play 7-on-7, air it out, Chambliss and the guys from Ole Miss are just as good. Like, it's more high flying, it's more wide open. But their ability to run the ball between the tackles and the way they have done that throughout the year does not match up well for Miami. I want to tell you this story, Coach Drew, and I don't think I told you this. So there was a media availability with Pete Golding and Heather Dinich, who's a sports journalist who I respect and like. She stuck Pete Golding with a tough question, not once but twice, and I really didn't appreciate the question that she hit him with twice, and neither did Coach Golding. So in this media availability press conference, it was a Zoom thing. She asked Golding which coaches will be back for your next playoff game. This is after the triumph of Ole Miss over Georgia. You just beat the SEC champion as the Ole Miss Rebels. You're like flying high. And she asked him which coaches will be back, and he's like, well, they're employed by LSU, but as far as I know, they'll all be back. But I can't tell you. I don't know. That's their decision. So he's trying to be classy about it. So then the press conference goes on for 20 whatever more minutes. You're welcome. I watch all this shit for you guys. This is a good story. So then Heather Dinich comes back on a second time at the end and goes, just to clarify, how many of your coaching staff are going to be back for this game? And then Pete Golding hit her back with a great one. He goes, I don't know, Heather. These are grown men. They're under contract with a different team right now. Hey, Heather, have you ever missed work before? What does your boss do when you miss work? And she's like, I don't know. And he goes, we have other coaches in the building that will be able to take over responsibilities. But I really respected his response because he didn't do a Bobby Knight and like cuss her out and act like a total asshole. But when she came back the second time and started asking him the question, I saw the look on his face and he's like, oh no, not this shit again. And he's like, yeah, you ever miss a day? Hey, Coach Drew, you ever missed a day of work?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've missed
When
a
I'm
day of work
dying.
too. What do they do? Well, Coach Drew, I don't have the character that you do. I just kind of casually take days off. But, I think everyone in the audience appreciates what I'm saying, that, everybody misses a day of work. So she's asking him as the CEO of Ole Miss football, well, what are you going to do if these guys don't show up to work? And he's like, we have 10 plus other coaches on staff you've never heard of. And he said that will step up and fill roles. But it was almost as if he perceived it as disrespect and he stood up for the other guys on the staff because now they've extended the amount of coaches that you're allowed to employ. I think there used to be a limit of 10 at a school. I don't know why that was a rule, but it was a rule. It's been extended. So college teams have like analysts and other guys who are like the understudy for the offensive coordinator and the understudy for the D-line coach or whatever. But so when she asked him the second time and he's like, you ever miss work? What's your boss do? Do they shut the business down? I was like, that's a pretty good response, Pete Golding, because when she came on that press conference the second time, and I like Heather Dinich, but she's doing her job. When she came back on the second time, I knew she was going to ask the same question. And he was like, think about it. People call off work. Your boss has to, figure it out, which we'll get to that when we get to the Indiana-Oregon game. But a reporter asked a question about personnel during that press conference with Dan Lanning.
Yeah,
but
not a good showing.
Oh, it's a good story. We're going to get to it. But yeah, Charlie Weiss coming back, mad respect. Heather Dinich, little rough that you hit Golding with that, and he kind of hit you back with a better response than the question that you repeated to him. I wish the Rebels a lot of luck. It's been a hell of a ride. I just don't think they're going to get through it, but I will be supportive of them even if they play my Hoosiers in the finals, just because, man, wouldn't it make Lane Kiffin look like a total jerk if they made it to the national title game and then LSU doesn't make it next year? Because what are we talking about here, Coach Drew? Why do we play sports from the time you're in Little League till, the rest of us don't get paid to play professionally? But why do we play? Why do you tell your kids to play? Why do we love this? Because everybody's supposed to be competing. And I don't think Lane Kiffin is
Having a
interested in
passion.
competing. Lane Kiffin's interested in, yes, out of passion. And I'm not saying you should play for free, coach for free, umpire for free, whatever. Me and you both get paid to do these things, but it would be hilarious that Ole Miss makes it to the national title should they beat Miami. And I don't think Kiffin's odds of making it to the national title game, if we handicapped it right now, are not as good as Ole Miss's are right now. So what Lane Kiffin wants is a handout. He wants to feel like he has a competitive advantage. He was in a good spot and he ran out. Do you want me to rant about
Correct.
Lane Kiffin, Coach Drew? I don't have to, but anybody that listens to our show already understands or agrees that why would you leave a championship caliber team? I didn't think Ole Miss was as good as they are. They have deficiencies, but they've got ballers and they overcome those deficiencies. So you want to leave and go to another school. Why? Because they're paying you more. LSU is not paying more than Ole Miss was going to pay. They're not. Ole Miss would match anything. Go ahead, Coach Drew.
Well, I will say this. When your dad tells you he's going to go get milk and doesn't come back, it does something to a man's spirit. And I think that's what we're seeing with Ole Miss. A lot of these kids believed in this man, and a lot of them are playing a lot angrier, and you can see it on the field, right?
I agree.
Golding, the defensive coordinator, stepped up as a stepfather and has done everything in his will to take care of it. But unfortunately, this Miami team also has a chip on their shoulder. They've been held out of the college football playoffs all the way until the final week when we were together after the college football Big Ten championship and all that selection Sunday. We were together, and Miami's playing with a chip on their shoulder that we're not even supposed to be here. Notre Dame is. We're gonna show you how great we are. So it's a true story for both programs. Wish them the best. It's gonna be a good one on Thursday, but there's another game on Friday, isn't there, Nick? Maybe another team. Isn't it? Oh, is it Alabama versus Oregon?
Gosh, yeah, Alabama versus Oregon. Hell no, Coach Drew. It's my number one ranked Indiana Hoosiers.
Well, that's what ESPN told me.
That is what C-SPAN told you, Coach Drew. The number one Indiana Hoosiers will face the number 5 Oregon Ducks in the Peach Bowl Friday. Coach Drew, the Peach Bowl is one of the last bowl games the Hoosiers went to, at least in the late 80s, with the great Anthony Thompson and Bill Mallory as head coach. So what we do here on the Midwest Blitz, we have a rematch of teams. Is we go over what happened in the first game, and then I look at it from a coach's perspective. If you lost the first time, you do have an advantage of making adjustments, because Coach Drew, tell me if you disagree, but if we played the first time and you beat me the first time, are you going to make a bunch of adjustments? You're going to lean on what helps you win the game immediately or initially, right?
Yeah, correct. That's the better fallacy too as well. When you see a team, especially in basketball or hockey or even baseball, the first game, whoever wins it the next game, they usually flip-flop and switch. So that is correct. It's been studied for a long time. Makes me fear this game.
There's a strategic advantage for Oregon in terms of we lost the first time, and I know that Dan Lanning and Curt Cignetti, two of my favorite coaches in the country. You know who my favorite coach is, Coach Drew, and the listening audience probably knows that I love Curt Cignetti, but I love Dan Lanning too. These guys appear to be friends. I did watch their press availability that they did together over a Zoom call, which is pretty entertaining, but we will talk about that at the end of this segment. These are two physical teams. Do you remember when somebody said, Coach Drew, that Oregon was not physical, that they were a finesse football team? Someone tried to tell us that earlier in the year. That's been absolutely disproved after the fist fight that they won against Texas Tech, which their defense won for them, and their quarterback helped them win under a lot of fire and had a lot of composure, did Dante Moore. So let's look at the first meeting between Indiana and Oregon real quick. Two things that I noticed when I went back and watched the film again, Coach Drew, is that Amari Washington, all conference, all Big Ten defensive lineman, interior guy, absolutely killed Bray Lynch for my Indiana Hoosiers on a bull rush one time and then bullied him a few other times. That is if you don't just want to ball watch and you want to see something interesting on third down, watch Amari Washington on the interior of the Oregon defensive line. He put Bray Lynch in Fernando Mendoza's lap a couple times. Now, on the other side of the ball, Mario Landino made his first appearance on SportsCenter. I think he had 3 sacks for Indiana, Coach Drew. And he's had 2 or 3 more the rest of the year. He's been a good player for the Hoosiers, but Mario Landino was really tough on stunts that helped set up something we're about to talk about. But Landino did a great job for the Hoosiers. He's not necessarily a star for them, but he's been a role player, but he had a lot of success against Oregon. So I want you guys to look out for that on third down. Here's the other thing that Indiana did the first game that was really effective, and I know that Dan Lanning has been thinking about. Indiana had a lot of pressure on Dante Moore the first game. One of the interceptions was not necessarily his fault, but it's a D lineman right in his face off of pressure. Well, Indiana set up stunts and blitzes, and this was intel I got from an Oregon insider earlier in the season after the game. Indiana was able to get their linebackers on blitzes against Oregon's running backs, and Oregon's running backs were not able to pick up blitzes against IU's linebackers. And in fact, IU played a traditional 4-3 personnel sometimes, even when Oregon was in 11 with 3 wide receivers, 1 running back, 1 tight end. So Indiana did a thing where they're kind of daring them to throw the ball in the first matchup. So I think that's a strategy thing to look out for. And as I say that, Devin Boykin has really emerged for Indiana as a star nickelback who's a great tackler, who's a former safety. He's a hybrid player, a monster back player, as we talk about here on the Midwest Blitz. So I'm not sure if Indiana will play 3 linebackers at the same time as much as they did the first game. They kind of dared Oregon to throw it the first game and got away with it. And Oregon had success in the passing game, but that's a chess match that you want to watch. Here's an advantage that I think Indiana has in this game is that, okay, this game will be played in Atlanta, Georgia. If you're from the Midwest, especially if you're from Indiana or Illinois, you know that it's only a 10 or 12-hour drive, depending on where you are, to get to Atlanta. This will be Oregon's 3rd college football playoff game. They had a home game, and then they had to travel to Miami for their last matchup. So the travel expenses, Drew, and this is a conversation about the formatting of the college football playoff and maybe having more home games involved in the format of this college football tournament, will affect attendance in terms of Oregon being able to make it there, because you're not driving from Eugene, Oregon to Atlanta, Georgia, unless you're the most hardcore person ever. And if you are, I applaud you. That is freaking awesome. Indiana fans have been driving through Atlanta on their way to Florida for spring break and family vacations their whole life. That might sound redneck. That's intel. Alabama fans told me that they were going to travel equally to the Rose Bowl as Indiana fans did. We all know that's not true now if you watch the game. And just because of location, I think Indiana will have a slight home field advantage. I also want to add in that in the first matchup, the only receiver production in this game, as far as wide receivers for Indiana, was Cooper and Surratt, and they were both huge in this game. But after we played Oregon the last game, Elijah Surratt was injured for about a month, and Charlie Becker, Charlie B from Tennessee, as Gus Johnson calls him. We love Gus Johnson. We love Jitterbugging Dog. Here on the Midwest Blitz, we love Gus Johnson. Charlie Becker has emerged as a receiver that not only makes big plays, but also has allowed Indiana to move receivers around from the slot to the field to the boundary in ways that they weren't doing early in the season. So that mixes it up for Oregon a little bit. I will say this for Oregon. Their secondary is young, including Brandon Finney, who is an absolute ball hawk. Brandon Finney's a turnover machine. This secondary for Oregon has improved a lot because they've aged throughout the season. Now, where we say, Coach Drew, if you're a true freshman or even a redshirt freshman at the start of the year, by the end of the year, you're not really a freshman anymore because you played a lot of ball.
You're level up.
Exactly. Time to level up again. And that's Brandon Finney is the exact example of that. He's dangerous. He forces turnovers. I think he had 2 interceptions and a forced fumble, 2 interceptions and a fumble recovery against Texas Tech. He's all over the field. Brandon Finney has improved, and he is the one, Coach Drew, that had the pick 6 on Fernando Mendoza in the first matchup with Indiana. So that was kind of his coming out party. I'm sure Mendoza will know where he's at this time. At least I hope he does as an Indiana fan, but Oregon has upgraded. I will say this for Oregon and their offense. Indiana has improved every week as the seasons went along. And I'm not saying that Oregon hasn't, but there's been wide receiver injuries for Oregon. And there were for Indiana, but Indiana's guys are all healthy now. And I don't intend to say that Decorium Moore isn't healthy. I don't intend to say that Gary Bryant isn't healthy, but I will say this. They've been implying that Evan Stewart, who was injured in July, was going to come back throughout each of these college football playoff games, and he hasn't come back. So the misinformation about Oregon's wide receiver health is interesting to me, where it's like they're trying to, play the gamesmanship thing where it's like, well, yeah, all our receivers are healthy this week. And there's been multiple times where that hasn't happened, including the last 3 or 4 weeks where they're threatening Evan Stewart to be healthy. I say all that to say this. Kenyon, the Freak Sadiq, needs to be a big part of this Oregon passing game. Sadiq is capable of doing a lot of things. He's one of the strongest guys on the team, one of the fastest guys on the team, one of my favorite players in the Big Ten, Kenyon Sadiq. But he needs to help more as a check down guy and as a release valve type of guy, because Indiana is going to get after the quarterback. If you didn't watch the Rose Bowl, you're not an IU fan, you're not an Oregon fan, you're not an Alabama fan, I guess. Oregon fans already know this shit. There's no way that you're just going to be able to drop back and pass against Indiana without establishing a run game, which Dan Lanning certainly will try to do. He also knows that you're not just going to throw deep all the time. They need Sadiq to be a guy that can help chip and help in pass protections, which he's got that skill set. He also
needs
to
be a leak.
Yes, a leak out guy for Dante Moore. Thank you, Coach Drew. I think that they need that from him. Coach Drew, can I tell a story about Dan Lanning and Cignetti in the press conference? Or you want to take it over for a second? I have a good story, but I don't want to hog it.
Well, what Nick is talking about, it's called Basketball. If you guys ever watched that movie, it's a great movie. It's by the people that wrote South Park, and it's about psyching people out while playing a basketball game that's also baseball. It's an awesome movie, but that's kind of like what Nick's gonna be. That's what Nick's gonna be talking about here shortly. I just want to say this. We're also gonna hit on this later. Me and Nick in the Midwest Goodbye when we get to there. If you don't like Indiana football and you think it's a fluke, well, I'm sorry. Next year they're still going to be in a really good position. We might be seeing the second coming of a Saban. I don't want to count the chickens before they hatch, but there's some things that I've seen that are very Saban-like. Now, this is the last thing I'll be saying about Alabama. Road-Tide. This is the last time I'll be talking about them. But all 4 coaches at one point was associated with Nick Saban. So, Nick Saban, guess what, buddy? Hopefully you do the honorable thing and not talk to any of these people. Now, he might be upset at Cignetti for beating his mama, where he might have Dan Lanning figure it out. But I don't see that happening because Saban's going to be neutral. But I do want to mention that is something that is interesting with that. Cincinnati, dog. Just wanted to mention that one more time before you tell the story. Dog. Yeah, it's just he's done a phenomenal job with this program and turning it around. And Coach Hep, I hope up there in Indiana heaven, right next to Kilroy's and all the great places up there, Kilroy's in heaven.
Old Bobby. Terry
Hopefully-
Hepner and Bobby Knight, they would be having a beer, except I know Knight didn't drink, which was probably good. Can you imagine how crazy he would have been if he did?
Yeah, could you imagine if Bobby Knight would have been crazy? What alternative universe?
Imagine him on a raging bender. I went to
Imagine
Bob
him
Knight
just chucking
basketball camp
chairs.
when I was a kid. He was wonderful with the kids. Stern, but instructive and open to, like, I used to get his autograph and stuff when I was a little boy at basketball camp. I'd be like, hey, coach, could you sign one more for my little brother? He's not here. And he was like, of course. Nick, I'm glad to have you here. I mean, he really was a gentleman in the right context, but yeah, I mean, I know that the other was true also. Yeah. So everybody knows who Bobby Knight is, or you wouldn't be listening to this show, I'm sure. But Terry Hepner was a coach that got hired from Miami, Ohio 15-ish years ago, and he was a guy from Indiana who had coached at Franklin College, I believe, and his dream job was to take over the IU football program, died of brain cancer. Indiana fans saw that not only as a tragic event for him and his family and everybody who grew to like, know, and love him as the coach. So Drew's making a reference to stories I've told him where it's like Terry Hepner is now in heaven seeing Indiana having won the Rose Bowl, and that was the dream of Coach Hep back in the day. Me and my friends used to do shots and cheers beers to Coach Hep all the time because just the sad timing and situation of his death, not just relating to football, but that he got his favorite job that he wanted his whole life, which was IU. And that's not every football coach's dream job, but it was his. And then he happened to pass away. So that's the reference that Coach Drew was making. So cheers to Coach Hep for sure. Let's move beyond two of my favorite coaches who are no longer with us to two of my favorite coaches who are with us, which is Coach Dan Lanning and Coach Curt Cignetti, the gangster Yinzer from Pittsburgh. So Lanning and Cignetti, Coach Drew, if fans don't know this, they did a mutual press availability over a Zoom call for the upcoming Peach Bowl. And I thought it was fun that they were both there at the same time. I think it was a way for them to like cheat and not have to be there as long because they were both there at the same time. Because you know how much they love press conferences anyway. So Lanning and Cignetti are both on this Zoom call, and at the end, somebody asked Lanning a question about an injury in the nickelback/dimeback position, and he asked a very specific question about substitutions and personnel strategy. And so he's like, Coach Lanning, you've had this injury at blah, blah, blah. Who's going to fill in that spot if so-and-so is not healthy? And Lanning, without flinching, without sneezing, goes, well, sir, I'm planning on playing it myself. If I'm not ready to go, I'll have one of the other coaches play the nickelback spot. And then without hesitation, Cignetti busts out laughing. I mean, it was the happiest you've ever seen either one of these guys in a press conference. It was like, did we just become best friends? But I think they are really good friends behind the scenes, or as Coach Drew pointed out, a conspiracy theory that they're both psychos and they're really trying to psych each other out before this game. But as I watched this press availability with Lanning and Cignetti, I just thought it was hilarious that Lanning had the perfect comeback to a really dumb question by a reporter, and Cignetti busted out laughing. It was great, man. He's like, I'm going to play it myself. And then Cignetti laughs his ass off. It was great.
It was awesome. Like, I was watching it and I'm just like, they're like, no, you go first. They're like, no, you go first. No, you got to go first.
Let me hold the door for you. Would you like to hold the door for me?
Age over beauty. No, we need to let the kids walk. It's like, it was this cat and mouse game that was glorious to watch.
They traded an insult of mutual compliments for a while that would make two drunk housewives blush. No, your hair looks good. No, I don't know. Your hair looks good. It was like, well, their team's really well prepared. They scout really well. We were lucky to beat them the first time. And then Lanning's like, well, I have a lot of respect for this coaching staff. And then Signetti was like, but not as much respect as I have for your coaching staff. This is a young superstar in the coaching world. And they did go kind of back and forth like that. I think that behind the scenes, they kind of set that up where they're like, let's just bullshit our way through this whole thing so we can get back to the transfer portal. That's my theory, but I do think that they like each other. I do think that they're friends. And I'm not sure that any of the, most of the pansies that are asking the questions, they can't relate to it because these guys are two of the coaches that actually do like each other, in my opinion. And so they probably text each other right before, like, let's just get through this together. And they're like, okay, thumbs up emoji. I don't know. It's fun to imagine them and their secret friendship that we don't know about. Maybe that's a football nerd thing that I'm saying, but I do think it's funny.
No, I do agree with you on that one. I mean, this game is definitely going to be a chess match. Again, we saw Indiana go to Oregon. That was College Game Day was there. And I don't know if that threw off Oregon because they were up so early that morning. I mean, I know Indiana was also up early in the morning. There is a thing about,
Signetti doesn't sleep. He waits, Coach Drew.
well, he might be a vampire. But with other conspiracies, you were saying something about Midwesterners going to Florida and how that may affect this game. I'm kind of alluding to something. Didn't you say something why this game may affect another team again?
Coach, you might have to jog my memory a little bit.
Well, if we were driving in the Midwest and we like to travel in the Midwest by car, right? Why would playing in Atlanta be an advantage for Indiana in comparison to Oregon?
Right. So, like I kind of mentioned earlier that I've driven to Florida as a child, as a passenger, as a college kid, and then as an adult. And I just know that it's a familiar route for Midwesterners to get to Florida. Now, if you're from the coast, Coach Drew, if there's anybody from the coast that actually watches this show, I would be shocked. This is the Midwest Blitz. This isn't the Stephen A. Smith East Coast Blitz, but yeah, it's very familiar path. And isn't it weird as a Midwesterner that if you're used to driving somewhere, you're like, well, let's hop in the car, throw it in an upper decky, and we'll just roll on down there. But that is the mentality. But, logically, the cost is less. I think gas prices just went down. Whether or not that's true or not, Hoosier fans are going to hop in the car and drive down there. I promise. So the price of the ticket also, this being the third college football playoff game for Oregon, fans have already went to the home game, traveled to Miami. So the more, and this is something I discovered last year, Coach Drew, from talking to people that travel to these games, is that, dude, I might want to go to every game and I might have the money to go, but I might not want to spend it depending on how I feel about my team's odds or whatever. I respect Oregon fans. They've traveled well for a long time, just like I respected Alabama fans' ability to travel, but they didn't travel well to the Rose Bowl. Well, there's certain reasons for that. It depends on where the site is. Depends on how excited you are about your team, what you think their odds are, all these things. But yeah, I mean, as a Midwesterner, this is a very Midwest topic for us on the Midwest Blitz. Yeah, dude, I've driven through Atlanta a million times. And in fact, Drew, after my last trip to Atlanta International Airport, I think I'd rather fucking drive there than fly there again. That airport is a nightmare. But that's how Indiana people are, Illinois people, Ohio people. They've made that trip. And so Indiana will travel very effectively. I mean, dude, this is going to be a home game for Indiana. I really think it will. If I'm wrong, you guys let me know in the comments. You always do. I just don't, it's just harder for the Oregon people to get there. Me and my dad drove to Iowa for an NCAA tournament game for basketball one time. we're not driving to Eugene, Oregon for a basketball game. I know this isn't a basketball game. You guys bear with me, but I mean, the travel, I understand the fan base and where the game is at. And this just happens to stack in Indiana's favor 2 games in a row, Coach Drew.
Yeah, and they're in Eastern time, so it's very comfortable for Indiana. So being in Atlanta is just being in a different spot.
Right.
Do you think Penix is going to be wearing an Indiana jersey since he is the Falcons quarterback? I know
That's
he's
a good
injured,
question.
similar to Kyle Murray.
I'll
Think
say
he'll be there?
this. I'll say this for other Indiana fans. Indiana fans love Michael Penix. We were sorry that it didn't work out when he was at Indiana with Kalen DeBoer as the offensive coordinator. But I don't know one IU fan that was mad that he transferred and went to Washington with DeBoer. I cheered for Washington. Penix went out there. It's kind of hard to talk about, Coach Drew, because we thought we were going to have Penix as a Heisman level quarterback. And here we are a few years later. And we got a
I
Heisman
mean,
quarterback. It's weird. It's really weird that we beat DeBoer. And I like DeBoer, like I said. It is weird, though, that Penix was here. And now we're in Atlanta, like you said. If Penix was there with an IU jersey on, that would be so dope as an IU fan.
yeah, absolutely. Another thing I want to mention too is Becker is going to play a factor in this game that many people aren't thinking about. Surratt had 151 yards against Oregon last time, and that was trouble for the secondary for Oregon. Now you also have Becker and you have Cooper. I mean, when we were listening to the Alabama versus Indiana, I remember the announcer going, "Oh, Cooper hasn't done anything all day," and then like Mendoza was like, "Here's a touchdown," and so it's just one of those things. They have really good wide receivers. They have 2 really good running backs. They have a Heisman winning quarterback. They have Pat Coogan. I mean, this offense for Indiana is special. Probably one of the most specialists they've had ever. Which I mean, it's new history.
It
It's
is
the
new
dawn of a new
history.
time
100%
in a good
Coach
way.
Drew. Okay, Charlie Becker's emergence was way after the last Oregon matchup, and Surratt and Cooper really did have their way in key moments with Oregon secondary. But as I said earlier, I think Oregon secondary has improved. I say all that to say, I expect Lanning to come out. They had a fake punt against Indiana that was successful. They had one against Texas Tech, I believe, that was also successful. Dan Lanning is the road dog. When I say Indiana will travel well, that's not a shot at Oregon's coaching staff or players. They're going to show up and play their ass off. I think Cignetti and Lanning are 2 coaches, Drew, that handle travel very well. You talked about teams that were had a bye, Texas Tech being one that got their ass beat. Oregon, Oregon travels. We've called Dan Lanning the road dog all year. So I think that Oregon's players will be more than well prepared. When I say that Indiana travels well, I'm just saying that they have a home field advantage in terms of fan base, but it doesn't mean that Indiana is automatically going to win this game. I do think Indiana wins the game, but I think that Lanning, especially after the troubles they had running the ball against the Texas Tech Red Raiders defensive line. Okay, Texas Tech is probably one of the only teams in the country that's better at stopping the run than the Indiana Hoosiers, and they did live up to that billing. Their offense didn't live up to the billing against Oregon, Coach Drew, but their defense certainly did in slowing Oregon's rushing game down. And Oregon is going to want to run the ball first. I think Lanning will not flinch as long as possible in commitment to the running game. I think that he'll probably try and steal one on special teams somewhere, but I think Cignetti is going to hold fast and hold steady as far as not taking a risk early. I think that Lanning is the one that will take a risk before Cignetti does, as far as like a 4th down or a trick play or a special teams play or something. But Oregon's very good at special teams plays. They're very good on 4th down. So I think this is going to be an absolutely wonderful football game, a smash mouth football game between 2 coaches who are familiar with each other. that are evenly matched. There's not a lot of teams that I think could slow down Indiana's consistent rushing attack, but Oregon might be one of them. We highlighted some offensive defensive line matchups earlier. I don't want to get back into the specifics too much because it'll go on too long. Both of these teams are tough as hell up front, tough as nails. This is going to be a true, not just a fist fight in the trenches, but skill players. I think that this is going to be kind of old school in the sense of run game, smash mouth, and then, ooh, maybe I beat you over the top here. Oh, maybe there's a play action here. And Dante Moore's game management as a compliment was great against Texas Tech because Oregon's running game did struggle. And I was not shocked, but a little surprised they couldn't get it going. But Texas Tech's run defense, like I said, might be even better than Indiana's, and Indiana's is one of the best in the country. So I think the fact that Dante Moore was able to help them on screen passes and crucial third downs and things of that nature against Texas Tech kind of sets him up for what he needs to be able to do against Indiana here. And look, Indiana just had almost a bye week against Alabama. I mean, Alabama flew how many miles to kick a field goal? Maybe that was the bye week for Indiana where they're not quite ready. Whereas Oregon's coming out of a battle. And I think we talked about here on the Blitz that coming through adversity helps prepare you for the next fight. And Oregon's ready. I'm not saying Indiana's not ready. I think this football game, though, has a lot of layers, and I think it's going to be really fun because, like I said, there were guys on Indiana's O-line that struggled against Oregon and vice versa. And Indiana's got Kellen Wyatt and Stephen Daly out at linebacker and D-line. They've still produced well without those guys, but how does that affect Oregon's game plan as far as running the ball, as far as pass protection and all these different things? I do think that Indiana is deeper at linebacker than Oregon, and by deeper, these guys can cover passes. These guys can stop the run. Bryce Betcher is one of my favorite players, future Houston Astro. Bryce Betchers, we've talked about all year on the Midwest Blitz. Dylan Thieneman has been great for Oregon, but even he took it in the chops a couple times last time they played Indiana. There are playmakers all over the field on every level, including on the line on both sides of the ball. This game is going to be epic. I don't think Indiana will blow Oregon out. I do think, though, that there's more pressure on Lanning because they lost the first time. Okay, they played at Oregon, and Indiana won the game. Okay, now it's a neutral site, and Indiana probably has more fans in the stands. I think that gives Indiana a stark advantage. But that's why we play the games, Coach Drew. And even as an Indiana fan, I would enjoy this to be a down-the-wire thing. Now, after the game, I might have a heart attack. I might have to call you, and you might have to someone come to my house and resuscitate me. But this is going to be an awesome matchup. The rematch is like this. It almost reminds me of the old Georgia-Alabama games back when Saban and Kirby were at the height of their powers. I really have that much faith in Dan Lanning. You know, I think Curt Cignetti's the best coach in the country right now. I don't know how you argue with that at this point, but no shade at anybody. This is a game. This is a football game for the ages, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else you want to cover before we head to the Midwest goodbye?
Coach Drew, you're always stealing my thunder on the Midwest goodbye here. No, I'll be done with Indiana until we get to portal news here in a second. Coach Drew, I wanted to ask you a question here on the Midwest Goodbye. We heard some stories earlier that as we record this on January 4th, Notre Dame had no portal visits over the weekend. The portal opened on January 2nd. That was the first day, football fans, that you were able to take visits if you had entered the transfer portal as a player. Notre Dame's not going to entertain any visits till tomorrow will be the 5th. So one of the players that was supposed to visit Notre Dame on the 5th is, in my mind, superstar wide receiver Nick Marsh from the Michigan State Spartans. He's already committed to Indiana, spoiler alert, but do you have any thoughts or opinions about Notre Dame not hosting portal visits after they've had over a month off after declining the bowl game and not making the college football playoff?
Yeah, I just feel like there's this mystique still around Notre Dame from the previous year. Excuse me. Now, they were national champions runner-ups. So, they didn't make the playoffs this year. The thing is, do they still feel like they control the portal the way they were successful last year? The reason why you were successful in the portal last year was because you made it to the national championship. So everybody's like, oh, I want to go there. Similar to where we're seeing a lot of the portal people are going. They're going to Miami. They're going to Ole Miss. Even though Lane Kiffin's not there, they're going to Oregon still. Indiana's getting these guys. It's because they want to go where winning happens. And Notre Dame is just sitting on their hands going, yeah, we got till Monday. We got till Tuesday. It happens fast. Kids get offers. I'm sure it's just like free agency on steroids. It goes, I'm going to give you $2 million. I mean, Steve Sarkisian of Texas talked about it. He said, I'm going to offer a kid a certain amount of money. If he doesn't take it, I'll say, see you later. If you come back, the money's going to be there, but you have this amount of time. I mean, hey, some of these coaches are closers, and I think Cignetti did a really good job closing out some potential players for my Irish.
Well, so on that point, IU did get a defensive lineman linebacker from Notre Dame. So here's the story about IU's portal situation is they've got Nick Marsh from Michigan State. They got Josh Hoover from Texas Christian, who's considered a coveted portal quarterback. And we've all seen what Cignetti and offensive coordinator Shanahan do with portal quarterbacks. So the other thing about Cignetti is they won the Rose Bowl. They got back the next morning at 3:30 a.m. And Cignetti said he gave the rest of his staff and all the players a day off, and he personally hosted 13 transfer portal players by himself on like 3 or 4 hours sleep. That's what you do if you want to win the transfer portal. You don't tell the kids, oh, you can't come in till Monday. Nick Marsh was supposed to visit Notre Dame is what I heard. So I'm just not really sure what's going on in South Bend. I thought that they were going to hit the portal hard after they declined the bowl game. And I thought like that would be their advantage. Their jumping off point to next season. And so far, it doesn't appear that they've done that. And I'm really confused by it. Cignetti would, it's like the old quote when back in the day, Reggie Miller and the Pacers played Shaq, Kobe, and the Lakers. And Reggie had a big game and he played like the entire game. And in the post-game interview, he said, they asked him if he was tired. He said, I can sleep when I'm dead. That's Curt Cignetti's mentality. I can sleep when I'm dead. And he came home, grinded, and already signed some big-time transfer portal guys, including the safety from Wisconsin, Zachman. I don't know. I don't know what the Irish are doing, but I know Cignetti is hitting it hard as hell. And I thought that being in the semifinal, the disadvantage is, oh, we're still playing, but we can't hit the portal. And Cignetti's like, nope, I just won't sleep, which I sometimes worry about his health coach, Drew, because I think he just doesn't sleep very much. I'm way younger than him, and I need my 8 hours if I can get it. But Cignetti is grinding in the portal for sure.
Well, one of the things Cignetti said that makes him successful, and I take this to heart, is he doesn't waste people's times. He said one of the biggest things as a coach now, going to what you said, he could have had his coaches and held them accountable for being there. But he said, no, you guys can have the day off. I'll take care of this. It's going to waste your time. Because he probably already knew what he wanted to do and talk to those prospects and take care of it. He didn't need so-and-so to show up and do it for him.
He is a
waste
closer.
of time. He said, I'm not wasting anybody's time. Either you're going to take it or not. And I'm pretty sure some of the people were like, yeah, this guy's all business. I do want to say on portal news, did you hear what happened to Brendan Sorbet?
Where did old Sorsby, the former IU quarterback that transferred to Cincinnati, had a great year? Where did he end up?
He ended up going to Texas Tech. So now we will not see Mahomes 2.0. Well,
I think
we
that's
might,
a great,
but I don't think they're going to compete.
That's a great pickup for Texas Tech. Sorsby, about 8, 9 games through the season, had 20 touchdown passes, 1 interception. It had already run for like 750 yards. he is about the most true dual threat quarterback in terms of throwing the ball effectively and running effectively and not turning it over. That's a big pickup for Texas Tech. What we say last time, Coach Drew, I said, Coach Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders have to go back to the drawing board with offense after their loss to Oregon. Yeah, he got to drawing real quick when they signed Brendan Sorsby. Sorsby is a dog. That was a great pickup for the Red Raiders for sure.
Yeah, and another thing too that I wanted to mention was that North Texas also is in the northernmost part of Texas. Oklahoma State, who fired their head coach earliest in the season, right? One of the biggest firings of
Mike
the season to
Gundy,
start the
yeah.
season. Yep. They stole both the quarterback in Messmaker, and they also got the running back for Oklahoma State. So it's just interesting that Oklahoma State went down to North Texas. We talk about feeder schools, and Oklahoma State stealing some people from North Texas.
Hey,
Pretty interesting.
that's a hard rebound. I mean, hard in a good way for Oklahoma State, because I heard we don't have NIL money, and they just paid Messermaker from North Texas. I was hoping he was going to go to Indiana, but in Sig I trust. If they didn't get the kid, I trust whoever they get, whoever Signetti wants to put on the field. But yeah, they paid, I heard $2.8 million to Messermaker, the freshman from North Texas this year that threw for over 4,000 yards. Good for OK State.
Josh Hoover is going from TCU to Indiana, which is just kind of funny to me because we were just talking about TCU the other day and how they beat USC and Josh Hoover left, and now he's going to the Hoosiers. And he is going to probably be stepping in for the Heisman winner of last year. What? That's some big shoes to fill there, Mr. Hoover. Hope you're ready to go, buddy.
Well, Signetti says every time they ask about quarterback play, he references his staff going back to IU Pennsylvania at Division II to James Madison to Elon. He's like, we've had an all-conference quarterback or an all-American quarterback, Division II all-American quarterback. He's like, we're all-conference or all-American, our staff is at quarterback every year for the last 5 years. That was, I think, before Mendoza just won the Heisman. What kind of a recruiting pitch is that to a quarterback in the portal? Yeah, last year we had the Heisman winner. The year before that, we had an all Big Ten guy. The year before that, we had all Sun Belt guy. The year before that, we had an all whatever conference Elon is in. Yeah, I mean, Signetti gets who he wants, and I would imagine even if he wanted Messermaker from North Texas, which I did from afar, great quarterback. Signetti sees the traits that he wants. He tells the kid, hey, if you want to come here, this is what I'll do. And you'll probably be in the NFL, just like Curtis Rourke is from last year. And if they don't take it, he just goes, all right, kick rocks. We move on to the next guy.
Yeah, I mean, Rocco Beck from Iowa State is going to Penn State, similar to what we saw too as well. We're seeing a lot of players that were with Campbell in Iowa State getting the bag, going to Penn State. Penn State's players went to Virginia. That's exactly what we talked about. When that portal opens, what will Campbell do? And Campbell execute what he needs to do. Rocco Beck, does Penn State play Iowa? That's going to be interesting. Matt Campbell getting his lick back. Another thing is Indiana playing Penn State. I know they played this year, but you also have some former quarterbacks who've played against each other going against each other again.
Very interesting. Rocco
I know you're going to be excited. Yeah, go ahead.
Rocco Beck to Penn State is perfect. And I mean, yeah, we kind of hypothesized that and about Matt Campbell taking guys from a good Iowa State team that had some injury problems, was a CFP contender early in the season, did beat one of our favorites, the Iowa State Hawkeyes. You know, Drew, people from Iowa hate people from Iowa State, and people from Iowa State hate people from Iowa. That's the first time I stuttered when I said that. We know that here on the Midwest Blitz. But I'm not surprised that Campbell did jack the quarterback, take him with him. And they got a lineman and maybe a tight end going with them so far. And this is only January 4th. The portal's open for a while. Campbell's going to refill the cupboard at least to be competitive next year. And what Campbell will do next year for the Penn State Nittany Lions is have a team that plays with togetherness. And having Rocco Beck there, who's been a winning quarterback for a long time, definitely helps. I think that they had internal issues at Penn State, as we've talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. What about Turbo Richards?
Turbo Richards from Boston College going to the Indiana Hoosiers. We talked about Zachman, the safety from Wisconsin, going to Indiana. Cignetti basically closed all these guys, 13 players, Coach Drew, by himself. 13 in a day. It's I do expect a drop-off for Indiana next year. I hope I'm wrong. You lose all the JMU guys. You lose X amount of players that were All-Americans this year or All-Americans last year. We had guys this year in Indiana that were all Big Ten last year that made honorable mention this year because they didn't get as many interceptions or as many sacks. But Indiana's losing a ton. But Cignetti is not going to lose. Well, actually, I was going to say he won't lose a wink of sleep replacing them. He will lose winks of sleep, but he will replace them, apparently. And Indiana's got one of the best recruiting classes coming in. They got some guys transferring out that were promising that didn't produce this year, and it's production over recruiting stars. It's production over 40-yard dash times. And Cignetti just goes on doing Cignetti things. My question about Cignetti is, how much endurance can he have to maintain the pace that he's had? He looks to me to be very tired, not in a bad way as far as this season. I don't know how long Cignetti can go on doing this the way he's doing it. Maybe he's a superhuman, Coach Drew. His performance and what he's done is certainly legendary, but I mean, the guy almost looks like he doesn't sleep. I told you the story when he made the comment, "I win, Google me," at the press conference. I got this story from an interview with the athletic director, Scott Dolson, who's an absolute IU legend, former Bobby Knight student manager, who's the AD at Indiana, told the story that the day that Cignetti told the story of "I win, Google me" to the press, he had fallen asleep at the wheel and run over a mailbox on his way to work because he only had like 3 or 4 hours sleep for X amount of days in a row.
Fuck.
And so he was just not in a great mood. And they were asking him, well, how can you make Indiana a winner? And he was just tired of it. And he was sleepy and he's in a bad mood. He's like, "I win, Google me." Fuck you. Stop asking me this shit. I mean, it was great. That with the context, it makes the story even more legendary for Cignetti.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about in the preseason, Nick Marsh was this great wide receiver that you saw Aiden Trials throw a pass to against Indiana last year. Not this past year, but the year before that.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is one of the sickest catches ever. And now it's like, now
you
get to watch him.
Just like we got Roman Hemby from Maryland. Roman Hemby had a 75-yard touchdown run against Indiana last season, and then he decided to come to the Hoosiers. That was one of the best runs I saw against IU all year. It was the longest run they gave up besides Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame, the 98-yarder that I had to witness with you at Notre Dame Stadium. But so, yeah, it's like great players bust our ass at Indiana, and then they're like, "I want to go play there." It's crazy. We're poaching guys that are good enough to beat us, but that's what you want, right?
If Indiana can get Chaz Coleman from Penn State, holy Toledo, then I'm really going to be like, Cignetti is setting up a dynasty. Like, I want him either on one of our teams, Notre Dame or, Indiana.
Yeah.
I really want Coleman. He's a dog. He should be playing on Sundays one day soon.
My question,
and,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
My question for Indiana is, even if we get a quarterback, we get receivers, we get skill players, there's a lot on the offensive line that we're going to lose, and a whole lot. I'm not going to go through all of it. We're going to lose probably conservatively, our top 4 offensive linemen. We're going to lose probably our top 4 defensive linemen, although there's other guys coming up. There's a lot Indiana's going to lose, but Cignetti will do everything he can to win. And as an IU fan, and as any college football fan should feel, that's all you can ask. If Indiana has a drop off next year, which you have to have a drop off, I assume, from 14-0, where we're at right now. Okay, well, we don't go undefeated next year. You can't be mad at Cignetti. It's not like he's not trying. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, again, the it is early. Offense, I think you go out and you get your skill players early, which they did. I think it's way easier to tell linemen, hey, you look good, you're going to be playing on Sundays because we have so many tools. I think Sig knows that too. It's it's funny, like in the past, I always allude to other videos and stuff like that too when we're talking about sports, and you're like, what do you mean the front office didn't know what to do? What do you mean we don't have analytical people? So, like, when you say, well, Indiana's going to lose all these people and I'm worried about this, I'm in my head, I'm like, nope, nope, Sig knows. Sig knows as much as we both know in
They
a
need
good
to.
way. It's more rhetorical that you said it, but he knows it. I mean, if he needs to only take 2 hours and take out two trash cans and a mailbox, he's going to get it done for you guys.
No
I
doubt,
mean,
man. The old Bo Nose t-shirts, the old Nike t-shirts. We need a Sig Nose, but I guess it'll have to be Adidas because Indiana is an Adidas school. But yeah, I don't doubt him. I'm enjoying the run that we're having so much. I hate to look at the portal, and then today I looked at the portal and I was like, holy cow, we're cleaning up the portal.
yeah, it's like like I said before, it's like free agency of sports, and it is what it is. But I mean, it's where we're at today. As being a former student athlete myself, you get into these situations where if you leave, your coach can block it. They don't have to pass you on and all this stuff. And now it's the Wild Wild West. Now it's the Wild Wild West with money. It is the Wild Wild West of sports we're living in. One last transfer portal idea, thought, or somebody was talking about was, according to Buckeye fans, the kicker for Illinois, who's all Big Ten and all conference and basically one of the best kickers in the portal, they were saying that they were recruiting him hard and going after him
Yes.
hard because they need a kicker. And I laughed because, again, talking to you about this, it is like free agency. Oh, my team can't get a rush. I got to go get an edge. Oh, I need a wide receiver. I need to do this. One of the things I do in college football is I like to run the air raid, which you need receivers that are 91, 93. I look at their attributes when I scout and I see, oh, 91, 93. I say, I don't care if you're an 86 or a 99. 3-star to 5-star. You're going to run this thing. And then I get these guys, and they're just running past everybody, and my system. I love my air raid. Protect the air raid.
In air raid.
Luckily, we're in the Midwest. That was perfect, because that was my last thing about the transfer portal. Goodbye. Sorry, Deacon. Well, there you go. Goodbye. Sorry, Deacon. All right. Well, this is Coach Drew signing off. Bye, guys.